Some communities maintain designated earth shrines, Asaase Yaa, marked by specially planted trees, unusual stone formations, or simple structural elements like low walls or clay pots partially buried in the ground. Certain unusually colored soil deposits, particularly white or red clay, are sometimes identified as especially potent manifestations of the goddess and become natural shrine locations. However, the most profound truth about Asaase Yaa worship is that the entire earth is her shrine. Any patch of ground can become a temporary sacred space through the simple act of pouring a libation or speaking a prayer while touching the soil. The spiritual specialists who serve Asaase Yaa are less formalized than those of some other Akan deities, but nonetheless play important community roles. Traditional earth priests, Asaase Afua, oversee land allocation in some communities, ensuring that farming, construction, and other land uses follow proper spiritual protocols. These individuals inherit their positions through specific family lines and undergo specialized training in the goddess's rituals and prohibitions. Female specialists particularly connected to the fertility aspects of Asaase Yaa often serve as midwives and advisors on agricultural matters. Their knowledge combines practical expertise with spiritual wisdom about the goddess's preferences and taboos. Unlike priests of some other deities who experience dramatic possession trance, Asaase Yaa's servants typically communicate with her through more subtle divination methods involving the earth itself. Interpreting patterns in scattered soil, the movement of insects emerging from the ground, or dreams received after sleeping directly on the earth. Ethical teachings and moral dimensions. Beyond rituals and offerings, Asaase Yaa's veneration encompasses ethical teachings that guide human behavior toward both the natural environment and other people. Environmental ethics. Long before modern environmentalism, Asaase Yaa's traditions taught sustainable land management. Sacred groves dedicated to the goddess serve as protected forest reserves where hunting, farming, and logging are prohibited. These areas preserve biodiversity and ecosystem services, while being understood as particularly potent manifestations of the goddess's presence. Taboos against certain forms of land use, such as mining in sacred areas or farming on riverbanks, effectively protect critical ecosystems. These prohibitions are framed not as practical conservation measures, but as respecting the goddess's will. Seasonal farming restrictions aligned with Asaase Yaa's rhythms prevent soil depletion and allow natural regeneration. These traditional agricultural calendars, far from being superstitious limitations, often reflected a sophisticated understanding of ecological cycles, social ethics, and community cohesion. Asaase Yaa's domain extends beyond environmental concerns to social regulation. As guardian of oaths, she upholds truthfulness as a core social value. The practice of swearing on the earth creates a powerful mechanism for conflict resolution and trust building. Her connection to territorial boundaries helps manage land disputes through ritual means rather than violent conflict. When disputes arise, traditional ceremonies invoking Asaase Yaa often facilitate peaceful resolution. As both the source of agricultural fertility and receiver of the dead, she symbolizes the complete human life cycle and the interdependence of community members across generations. This perspective fosters long-term thinking in social decisions rather than short-term individual benefit. Asaase Yaa in the colonial and post-colonial eras. The European colonization of West Africa brought profound challenges to traditional spiritual practices, including the veneration of Asaase Yaa. Christian missionaries often specifically targeted earth deity worship as primitive paganism, attempting to replace traditional land ceremonies with Christian rituals. Colonial authorities frequently dismissed land claims based on traditional spiritual relationships with Asaase Yaa, imposing European concepts of land ownership that treated earth as property rather than a living divine being. During this period, Asaase Yaa worship went underground in many communities, with public rituals minimized while private observances continued in households. The goddess became a symbol of resistance to cultural domination, with continued libations and earth rituals serving as assertions of indigenous identity and sovereignty. Following independence, Ghana and other West African nations experienced varied religious developments. While Christianity and Islam became dominant official religions, traditional practices experienced significant revivals, often in syncretic forms blending with the imported faiths. Today, many Ghanaian Christians and Muslims still pour libations to Asaase Yaa before major life events or building projects, a practice they might describe as cultural tradition rather than religious worship, though the distinction is often blurry. Asaase Yaa in contemporary life. Far from being a historical relic, Asaase Yaa remains a living spiritual force in contemporary West Africa and throughout the diaspora. Environmental activists in Ghana increasingly invoke Asaase Yaa traditions to combat destructive practices like illegal mining, galamsey, deforestation, and pollution. By framing environmental protection in terms of traditional spiritual values, these movements gain cultural resonance beyond imported conservation concepts. Some conservation projects explicitly partner with traditional authorities to protect areas associated with Asaase Yaa, recognizing that spiritual significance often proves more effective than legal designation in preserving ecosystems. Land rights and gender equality. Women's land rights advocates sometimes reference Asaase Yaa's feminine identity when challenging male-dominated land ownership systems. The argument that land belongs ultimately to a goddess rather than to men has provided leverage in some community-level negotiations over women's access to agricultural resources. Traditional earth priests invoking Asaase Yaa have become important voices in disputes over land grabbing by international agricultural corporations or mining interests. Their spiritual authority sometimes succeeds where legal challenges fail in protecting community land rights. Throughout the Americas, particularly in Brazil, Cuba, Jamaica, and the United States, revitalized interest in African spiritual traditions has included renewed veneration of earth deities cognate with Asaase Yaa. Diaspora practitioners often adapt traditional rituals to urban environments, creating innovative practices that maintain the essence of earth veneration while acknowledging changed circumstances and the complex history of forced migration. Asaase Yaa wisdom for today's world. What might this ancient goddess of the earth offer to contemporary global challenges? First, she provides a model of human-environment relationships based on reciprocity rather than exploitation. In Asaase Yaa's worldview, humans are not owners of land, but dependents who must maintain proper relationships with the living earth that sustains them. This perspective offers a profound alternative to the extractive capitalism driving ecological crises. Second, her dual domain over life and death reminds us of natural cycles and limits. Modern culture often denies death and overly valorizes unlimited growth. Asaase Yaa teaches acceptance of natural boundaries and the necessity of giving back what we take, a philosophy with profound implications for sustainable development. Third, her role in truth-telling and oath-keeping speaks to our post-truth era of misinformation. The concept that one's words create binding relationships with the very earth beneath our feet suggests a gravity to truth that transcends temporary convenience. Finally, as a female deity of profound importance, Asaase Yaa offers models of feminine divine power largely absent from dominant global religions. Her veneration demonstrates how spiritual traditions can honor feminine creative force alongside masculine principles, potentially informing more balanced approaches to gender in contemporary spiritual practice. We began this journey by considering the earth beneath our feet not as inert matter, but as the living body of a goddess. This perspective, maintained by the Akan people through centuries of cultural encounter, challenge, and change, offers profound wisdom for navigating our current planetary predicament. Asaase Yaa teaches us that we belong to the earth rather than the earth belonging to us, that we are participants in a relationship requiring respect, reciprocity, and restraint. Her traditions remind us that the ground we walk upon holds both our ancestors and the future generations who will inherit the consequences of our actions. As global society grapples with ecological crises, land conflicts, food security challenges, and spiritual disconnection, this ancient goddess speaks with surprising contemporary relevance. Perhaps it is time to pour a libation to Thursday's earth, not as exotic ritual tourism, but as genuine acknowledgement of dependencies too often forgotten. The next time you feel soil between your fingers or walk barefoot on the ground, remember the Akan understanding that you are touching not merely dirt, but divinity. A goddess who has sustained countless generations before us, and who, if properly honored, may continue to nurture humanity through uncertain times ahead. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of Asaase Yaa, the sacred earth goddess of the Akan people. If you enjoyed this journey into West African spirituality, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, remember the wisdom of those who recognize divinity not in distant heavens, but in the very ground beneath our feet.